The Black Swan murder trial is what it's being dubbed. It's a trial of Ashley Benefield for the shooting of Doug Benefield at the time, her estranged husband, or not so estranged as we're learning now. It's a very complicated case. A couple met, and 13 days later, they're married. 6 days later, they're taking an international trip. I mean, my God. I mean, I've gone on a date earlier this week. Lovely date, but I can't imagine like, oh, hey, let's go to Europe this weekend, and then maybe next weekend, let's get married. Maybe down the road, but not yet. But it takes a little impulse right there if to think that this is normal life. But nonetheless, they get married, they get pregnant, and things go sour very quick, and a custody battle ensues before the child is even born. And shortly after the child is born, Doug ends up dead. We'll talk about the details of that in just a second. Robin Dreeke, retired FBI special agent, chief of the counterintelligence behavioral analysis program. It's a lot of pieces in this one to fully understand it. Just, the 10,000 foot overview on this thus far. What's your reactions as we go into the trial?
My first reaction is Tony went out on a date, which gave me a big smile.
And it was
leakage,
good.
Tony.
It was a great date.
You gave me leakage.
Not let's get married in 13 days and go to Europe. I mean,
we need
I
some
don't think
levity
any
now and
dates
then.
that, quite honestly. But good. So I mean, yeah. This is so bizarre, especially as now what we're learning that they were, well, at least in Doug's mind, allegedly from his cousin, they were working on reconciling. That's what he has said and he believes was happening. And Doug apparently he's under that impression she's not. She even talked to her attorney and said, no, I got a safe place for you to go, and we're going to move all your stuff out on Monday. But why is Doug there moving and getting stuff in the U-Haul if that is ultimately her plan? That's a weird part of all of this.
So, interestingly, the more cases we do, we start seeing patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And every time we see a murder of a spouse, the first question you and I always ask is, all right, where are the kids involved? Custody issues, because whether it's a murder for hire or a murder of someone, we see a pattern there. The last pattern, I can't remember the case off the top of my head, but we have the mother kind of being behind the scenes orchestrating the murder for hire of the son-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
And so what all of a sudden struck me with this case was I was watching True Crime today. Not True Crime. It was
That's us.
yeah, that's us. You know who I'm talking about, Tony.
Yeah. You're talking about Vinny on Court TV?
Yeah, Court TV. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's this cold is kicking my
I
ass.
hear you.
But we're watching Vinny on Court TV, and what all of a sudden struck me was she went to the mother's house and then this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious to find out more about this mother, because when you are dealing with chaos, there's usually someone pulling the strings behind chaos.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious about the mother's involvement with this entire thing, because she, as an individual, her reps seem to be light in life. They seem to be a little off, a little chaotic. He seemed to be, again, from our outer 50,000 foot look, especially when you listen to his daughter speaking and you listen to his life arc and how his first wife died. I mean, he's got a kind of a compassionate story, and then he falls in love rapidly with this very young woman, and that seems to have this mother that I've become very curious about.
It's an interesting mix. I mean, I again, my own conjecture here. I know nothing personally about these people, and we know very little about Ashley because she's never spoken to anyone. Never didn't even make the damn 911 call, and has never said a word to police. But typically, if you're an empathic person, you're a compassionate person, you sometimes can be drawn to, or people are drawn to you that are more on the narcissistic scale, and you become their source. And the rapidness of this relationship kind of strikes me as that. That's just kind of my conjecture of understanding it a little bit. And then, you're a pleaser. You're wanting to make things go good, and you want to be there for the kid. He was driving 8 to 12 hours every weekend to go be there for her, even while they're going through this issue of the custody battle, and they're separated. But he's trying to come down and help her when she has morning sickness. He still didn't just withdraw and say, fine, whatever. He wanted to be there. He wanted to be dad. He wanted
Mhm.
to help out. And then they get into a counselor, a mediation process, and announce their intent to reconcile and withdraw the divorce petition. The judge says, we're going to do a psych eval before I grant this. The judge didn't just say, well, you're telling me this, so of course, let's sign off. Even the judge saw this is a little weird. Maybe you need to take a step back. Impulsivity is a key part of all of this, especially on the part of Ashley, from what we can understand here. So, all that being said, um, it's confusion. It seems like to me there's a lot of issues here of trying to deceive one for their own means. The fact that Doug is there loading a U-Haul, and she's already talked to an attorney saying, "I don't want to do this." And so, why is Doug there? If this is what you want, why is he hanging out? Why is this part of the equation at all? And why did mom take the daughter somewhere else? To your point about questioning, and this moment actually takes place where she pulls a gun, and kills him.
Yeah, her that behavior into itself, just the gun, pull, shoot. I mean, that just it so stands out in my mind. I would love to see text between the mom and the daughter.
Hmm. Yeah,
I think that's going to be very revealing in this case. When
yeah,
when those things get high, I mean, doesn't that happen with every single case we have? Like
yes.
we have this certain viewpoint of things, and then all of a sudden we see the text messages, and we're like, oh,
Well, and
there
texts
it
are
is.
interesting because it's a look in text and Google searches. Those are the two things,
Hmm.
because those go into the mind. Those are sometimes things that you may not even say out loud.
Right.
But it's for some reason we have more of ability to express those things in writing. So yes, those are going to be key pieces in this. I think the digital footprint's going to be very fascinating on this case. It just still leaves you wondering, how and why did all this take place? Let me ask you this, because there was testimony from Ashley where we actually did hear earlier. I remember hearing this audio of her talking about an incident where Doug uh, pulled a gun out of the accusation, and this is an accusation. The judge said that she thinks it's a bunch of bunk and that this never really happened. But she says that he pulled the gun in initial testimony from his waistband, and shot around into the air. Um, in further testimony, she says, "Oh, he pulled it from the boot." Now, having a gun pulled on you is a kind of traumatic event, especially if it's something that you don't normally have happen, which I think most of us don't normally have happen. But you remember it. You remember every second of it, and you remember where it came from. Yes, it's a traumatic event, but it's one of those things that doesn't necessarily, I think, get misconstrued of pulling from a boot versus a waistband. I was in a situation once, and I can speak from experience on this. This isn't just my own conjecture. I was in a relationship where that all ended, obviously, but a gun got pulled on me because they were in a very depressive, suicidal state, and it was going back and forth. And I remember every freaking second of that. I'm not
Time
gonna
slows down.
ever misconstrue that moment and go, "Oh, maybe she pulled it from her purse," or maybe she pulled. Like, no, I can tell you exactly where that came from. What does that say about Ashley's story? The fact that she can mix up something that key.
Well, to me, it shows it's a story.
Yeah.
It's incongruent. There's no consistency with the story, and the story sounds like a story. It sounds like something she read in a book.
Hmm.
I mean, it really doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
the bad guy pulled it from his boot. Bad guy pulled it from waistband.
Yeah.
I've never used that language. I mean,
No.
it's not that it's wrong. I never accuse anyone of lying
Hmm.
because we don't know.
We don't
But
know. Yeah.
it gives me pause. Like, boy, the choice of language and the choice of words are interesting, and the inconsistency in the stories where you would remember it extremely well just because when fight or flight hits and time slows down, like you so articulately said, you remember every single moment. because every second seems like a day
Hmm.
because it's that slow moving. That's why we lose dexterity. That I mean, literally, kind of going back to what we are talking about the attempt on former President Trump's life, when we saw the Secret Service agent having a hard time putting her gun back in her holster because we lose dexterity. Because for her in that moment, time was moving slow. I mean, we've all experienced this. If you remember being in a dream and
Hmm.
you feel like you're trying to run, you can't really run, and you're so
Yeah.
frustrated. That's what happens when when your frontal cortex get flooded with all those fight or flight hormones.
Hmm.
You just can't move. You lose dexterity, but also you remember everything. You feel frozen in time as you're trying to move, and that's why training is the thing that kicks in, so your body hits natural reaction, so you don't have to think, because you're really not thinking in those moments. You're just seeing and absorbing. And so the fact that she has an inconsistent recollection of that is interesting.
Well, and also the fact that a judge has already said that the quote is, "I don't believe there's one scintilla of truth to your abuse allegations." This was when they were going through the custody battle. Um, that's going to be an interesting one to play to a jury. I know they were trying to get that excluded. I don't believe they did. So there's a lot that's not working in her favor. Again, I don't. I'm basing my opinion here on what exists right now in the evidence from what
Right.
we know. I'm not going to say she's innocent. I'm not going to say she's guilty because I don't know. But if you're to put all of the things on a scale, right now there's a lot of inconsistencies in her story that makes you go, it's going to be fascinating once all the evidence comes out. That's why we have a court. That's why we have trials to determine all of those sorts of things. But there's not a lot of evidence here on her part other than her claims. How is that going to play to a jury?
I really think it's going to come down to texting between her and her mom.
Interesting.
If texts exist, I think that's going to be I think that's what's going to nail this.
That's going to be very fascinating. This is an angle I haven't even thought of, Robin. So I'm fascinated to see and wonder what we're going to find out in that digital footprint because that's something we
And
haven't
here's
heard
why I
much of.
say that. So here's a young woman that when trauma and strife hit her life from her perception, what did she do? She ran home.
Hmm.
That her mom, and so her mom seems to be a bit involved in her life.
Hmm.
And if you're doing crazy things and your mom's still involved in your life, the
Yeah.
likelihood, and she's not talking anywhere else, she's talking somewhere. We, as human beings, we have a need for an outlet somewhere. I got a feeling that outlet's the mom, again, just from what the limited things we
Yeah.
see. And I think there's going to be some sort of messaging, phone call, something between her and her mom that's going to be very revealing in this entire thing.
And it doesn't even necessarily mean that it's, mom sitting there egging her on, like, yeah, go take him out, but more so, what is she saying to her mom? And is
Hmm.
mom sitting there going, I know my daughter is very impulsive. There might be some sort of disorder or something going on here. I'm constantly trying to calm her down, trying to be that voice of reason. That's going to be very interesting to see what that conversation looks like. Because I think you're right. That's going to be a very revealing part of this. Um, Far more than the little bit of physical evidence that exists, which looks like a scratch on the side from a box,
Yeah.
not necessarily abuse.
And I think what we might see is, because again, you have his daughter, which seems to be very close to her dad,
Hmm.
and to have these great recollections. So I think you're going to see possibly, again, pure conjecture, a compare and contrast between healthy interactions and potentially unhealthy interactions between a mom and her
Hmm.
daughter and a father and his daughter.
Yeah.
And I think those are what's going to stand opposing to each other. And I think that's what the jury's going to see.
Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.